Hi everybody, Don Dickson back again. I want to thank you for joining me again today. We're going to do a second little part of our review on some of the things that we really need to know about presentation of lures before we actually launch our boat. And there's going to be quite a bit of conversation along those lines once I am in the boat and out in the lake. But I wanted to be sure you had this background information before we actually start that. So with that in mind, here comes a little follow-up on what we're just going to call an introduction to presentation of lures. So I hope you enjoy it, hope you learned something, and I'll talk to you in a minute. Depth and speed control. All success, all failure. Depth and speed. So, with that being said, then we left to the next little area of study, which, well, if we realize now, depth and speed is what we have to control. First, we have to consider, we ask ourselves, what depth? How do we know what depth? Well, we already established that fish change their depth in the body of water, not only day by day, sometimes hour by hour, minute by minute. They're changing depth. We never know what depth they're going to be in today when we're out there on the water. We don't know. So we have to be able to control all depths. And we say to be consistently successful, which is really all that we all want. We have to be consistently successful. We have to be able to check from 0 to 60 feet. Not 0 to 30, 0 to 60. And if we're able to do that, we pretty much are going to catch fish every day. And so much of the time, we're going to be running into the school of fish. And lots of times, they're going to be 35 feet, 40 feet, 45 feet. And we're catching a big school of big fish, all because we're equipped and we're knowledgeable enough to know that we have to check all depths, all speeds, in order to arrive at the fish. Now, with all that being said, we had to come back and say, all right, we know we got to control all these depths of speed. How we do it? What gear do we use? So we came out with the right stuff, and we had a whole study on what's the best rods, how many different types of rods, how many different types of line, what lures do we use, and all of the above that we talked about over the last month. It's the gear that we need to be able to check all these depths and all these speeds. I knew when I started talking about the proper gear, there'd be some resistance in the minds of some fishermen as to what I was about to say. However, keep in mind now, in all of these areas of study, my goal was, how quickly can I get from point A to point B in my study? Because in the end, what I want to do is what you want to do. It's what I wanted to do back in 1970, and it's what every one of my students ever wanted to do. They all had the same basic end result desire, which was to catch more and bigger fish. Well, how can I get to catching more and bigger fish? I had to go through these steps. But now we come to this area of tools. And let me share with you, I can promise you, of all the travel that I did over the years and all of the fishermen I witnessed on all different types of lakes, reservoirs, rivers, everywhere I went, I'm seeing fishermen, and lots of them. And I can tell you without reservation, most of them didn't do a good job controlling their depth and speed because they hurt their chances by using the wrong gear. Even people that heard about all these guys starting to catch all these fish trolling spoon plugs, they bought some spoon plugs, went out and got a casting rod and their real stretchy monofilament line and started trying to troll with a lure that's bouncing on the bottom. Get it hung up and losing lures, and pretty soon after a half a day of that, they quit. They quit their sort of adventure into trolling, mainly because they had the wrong gear. It's just unbelievable how many people have killed their chance before they get on the water because they have the wrong gear. We talked about boats and motors, having a steering wheel. You're killing your chances if you have a steering wheel. And I'm going to talk more and more and more about presentation of lures and how do we actually end up catching more and bigger fish. And keep in mind, I'm interested in going from point A to point B on that. What's the quickest way I can get you catching more and bigger fish? So I'm going to tell you the way it is, the way I experienced it, what I learned from Buck, but more importantly, what I experienced, because my whole deal was I want to catch fish. I don't like not catching fish. It's not fun. I've actually read a lot of articles where people would say back in the old days, you know, they'd say, boy, we didn't catch any fish today, but boy, we had a great day. It was a beautiful day, you know. Hey, nobody enjoys the outdoors any more than me, but let's be honest. You're not catching fish, you're not having fun. You know, a lot of kids used to come to my clinics, and when I'd take a break, I'd ask them if they really like going fishing with Dad and Mom. And you'd be surprised at how many of these young children told me they really didn't like going. It was boring. They'd rather be doing something else. And that's probably way more relevant today because there's so much more for kids to be doing today than there was back then. But nobody, your children and my kids, they don't like not catching fish. So my job always was, I got to get Mom and Dad catching more fish. I got to get them, you know, involved with the truth about catching fish, and then get them out there on the water in the quickest way I can. Get them catching fish as quickly as I can, so that all of a sudden now their children become excited about going fishing, which is the way I'd like to see it. And as we review all of that 4 or 5 months, however long we've been talking, as we look back on that, it was all for a purpose, but I did it as quickly as I thought I could without skipping anything, getting from point A to point B. And as we look at the overall point A, point B, I started here, but I want to get you catching fish tomorrow. So with that being said, we're starting our brand new study today, which is presentation of lures. I do want to say this, that it doesn't matter to me, and I know it doesn't matter, never mattered to Buck, whether you or whether I prefer to cast rather than troll, or whether you prefer to troll rather than cast. It makes absolutely no difference. Keep in mind, we're trying to get from point A to point B. Now that we're finally taking all of the knowledge that we've been talking about for the last 5, 6 months, we're going to take it now. We're going out on the water. You and I are going fishing. We're going to go fishing, and our whole idea behind all of this study is so that we can catch more and bigger fish. Now, when you catch those fish, I don't care if you release every one of them. I don't care if you keep a legal limit, take them home and have dinner. It doesn't matter to me. That's up to you. But catching a fish does matter to me. I want you catching fish. I want your kids catching fish. I want you to have fun and want you to be able to go back and be successful. And Buck used to also say that if you don't have some success, it's your desired leisure pastime. If you don't have some success, it could be golf, could be fish, whatever it is, you have to have some success, or eventually you lose interest and you give it up. I don't want to see that happen. And the only way I know I can be happy is when I'm catching fish. I'm not happy when I'm not catching fish. But I realized a long time ago that I had to have this knowledge. Buck says knowledge is the key to success. It truly is. But part of that knowledge is knowing that in order to control all of my depths and speeds, in some instances, there'll only be one efficient way of fishing. If I have a lake that's full of weeds, absolutely chock full of weeds, I can only cast. I can't troll. I can only cast top water or weedless bait. That's all I can do. And I've fished lakes like that before. I was restricted to casting. We've already given a great example of when you fish in a river, for instance, where only trolling could be used. And I literally believe we've caught somewhere between 10 and 15,000 walleyes off of that one spot at our summer school over a 17-year period. And we wouldn't have caught one of those fish if we hadn't been trolling. They were all caught trolling. And another example would be if you want to go do some coho fishing out on Lake Michigan, or do some salmon fishing out on Lake Ontario. Can you imagine going out on a Great Lake, any one of the Great Lakes, with a casting rod only? Come on, guys. We have to do both. Buck always did both, even though sometimes only one might be the only way we can do it. We can only cast, or we can only troll. These situations come about, but it's through our knowledge of the fish, lake types, and all of the things that make up that overall fishing day, that fishing condition. Seasonal movements of the fish, we'll make those decisions based on our knowledge, but we have to be equipped. Just like the gear, we have to be equipped in our presentations that we can do both. We can do whatever is called for in order to arrive at that depth and that speed for that particular day, so we can have our success. So as we begin this study, we're going to be talking about trolling and casting both. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't really care which one of those you prefer. I'm telling you A to B, the quickest way to get from A to the fish, to more and bigger fish, to the school of fish, the quickest way. Casting and trolling both. You have to have both of those things in your repertoire. You've got to be able to do both in order to be, and the key word in that sentence is to be consistently successful. You have to be able to do both. So, we're going to conclude for today, and I want you to know I'm excited about getting into this discussion, because after all of our study, after everything we've done over the last few months, now we get a chance to get out there on that water and put some of this stuff to use. So there you have it, my friends. That was what I would call pretty much, between the last time we met and today, that's pretty much an introduction to presentation of lures. And I promise you, I'm going to do everything possible to get out there on the water next week and get started with our on the water training. And so, at any rate, I appreciate each and every one of you. Appreciate all your concerns and your prayers. And I want to encourage you to tell somebody else about our studies here and what we're trying to do, and tell them there's a value in it, that they should for sure like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to our videos and our vlogs here on the YouTube channel. And I hope also that you've remembered to go over to DonDicksonFishing.com and check out the right angle. There's basically 60 fishing articles on there on all different subjects. And if you haven't seen them, I encourage you to go read them. And I promise you, there's something of value somewhere in those stories for each and every one of you. There's something that applies to you and your fishing somewhere in one of those stories at least, and in many cases to almost all of those stories. So be sure to check that out, and I appreciate you being here with me today, and I look forward to seeing you the next time we get together out on the water. Thanks for being with me, and we'll see you then.